Commander Zethkar stood on the bridge of his massive warship, looking out at the stars. His 8-foot-tall body was covered in thick, dark green skin that looked like armor. His red eyes glowed as he studied the reports on his screen. Today would be another easy victory for the Veltharian Empire. The blue planet called Earth was their next target. The humans living there were weak and stupid, according to the intelligence reports. They had just learned how to travel between stars. But their ships were small and pathetic. Their weapons were simple compared to Veltharian technology. Most importantly, they were divided into many different groups that fought each other instead of working together. "Commander, we will reach the Sol system in 10 minutes, said his second-in-command, Vexthul. The younger Veltharian warriors. Claws clicked against his weapon as he spoke. Zethkar nodded slowly. He had conquered 17 planets in his long career. Each time, the story was the same. The enemy would see the mighty Veltharian fleet and surrender quickly. Those who tried to fight were crushed within hours. The humans would be no different. Send word to all ships, Zethkar ordered. We will drop out of hyperspace in battle. Formation. The humans will see our power and give up without a fight. If they are foolish enough to resist, we will destroy their pathetic ships and take their world by force. The 12 Veltharian warships were impressive to look at. Each one was over a mile long, covered in thick armor, and armed with weapons that could destroy entire cities. The flagship Void Talon was the largest and most powerful of them all. Zethkar had never lost a battle while commanding it. As the countdown began, Zethkar felt confident. The humans had only been in space for a few decades. The Veltharians had been conquering worlds for thousands of years. This would be over quickly. 3.2.1. Dropping out of hyperspace now, announced the navigation officer. The stars shifted around them as the fleet returned to normal space. Earth hung before them like a blue jewel, beautiful but helpless. Zethkar expected to see a few primitive human ships fleeing in terror. Instead, his blood turned cold at what he saw. Hundreds of human ships surrounded his fleet. They were much smaller than Veltharian vessels, but there were so many of them. They moved in strange patterns, darting around like angry insects. Their formation made no sense by proper military standards. Impossible, Zethkar whispered. The reports said they only had a few dozen ships. Commander, incoming transmission from the human fleet, said the communications officer. Put it on screen, Zethkar ordered. A human face appeared on the main display. The creature was small and pale compared to a Veltharian, with short brown hair and determined blue eyes. Despite his small size, something in his expression made Zethkar uncomfortable. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force, the human said. His voice was calm but firm. You have entered our space without permission. Turn around and leave now, or we will destroy you. Zethkar almost laughed. This tiny creature was threatening him? He leaned forward in his command chair. I am Commander Zethkar of the Veltharian Empire, he replied. Surrender your world now, and your people will be allowed to live as slaves. Resist, and we will turn your cities to ash. The human captain smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. We tried the slavery thing once. Didn't work out. Earth Defense Force, this is Morrison. All ships, attack pattern Delta. Show these aliens how humans fight. The transmission ended. For a moment, Zethkar wondered what the human meant about slavery. Then the battle began, and he had no time to think about anything else. The human ships attacked in a way that made no sense. Instead of forming proper battle lines, they swarmed around the Veltharian fleet like bees attacking a bear. They were fast, much faster than their size should have allowed. They darted in, fired their weapons, and disappeared before the Veltharians could respond. All ships maintain formation, Zethkar ordered. Use standard defensive pattern 7. These insects cannot hurt us. But he was wrong. The human ships were small, but their weapons were surprisingly powerful. More importantly, they seemed to know exactly where to hit. They targeted engine sections, weapon ports, and shield generators with deadly accuracy. The Veltharian heavy cruiser Death's Edge was the first to suffer serious damage. A group of human fighters swarmed around it, firing at the same spot over and over until the armor gave way. Then one of the human ships, badly damaged and leaking air, crashed directly into the cruiser's main reactor. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. When it faded, the massive Veltharian ship was nothing but twisted metal and debris. Impossible, Vexthul gasped. No warrior would sacrifice themselves like that. It goes against all logic. Zethkar stared at the wreckage. In Veltharian culture, death in battle was honorable, but throwing your life away was considered stupid and shameful. Yet this human had destroyed a ship 100 times larger than his own through pure sacrifice. Commander, the cruiser Star Killer is reporting heavy damage, called out the communications officer. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Before Zethkar could respond, another group of human ships performed the same impossible tactic. 3 small fighters, all heavily damaged, crashed into the Star Killer at full speed. The second Veltharian cruiser exploded in a ball of fire. "This is madness," Zethkar muttered. "They're destroying themselves to hurt us." Captain Morrison's voice came over the radio again. "All ships, focus fire on the big one. That's their command ship. Take it down and the others will break." Suddenly, every human ship in the area turned toward the Void Talon. Hundreds of small vessels opened fire at once. The Veltharian flagship's shields flared and sparked under the incredible assault. "Return fire!" Zethkar shouted. "Destroy them all." The Void Talon's massive weapons began firing, and human ships exploded like fireworks. But for every ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. They kept coming, wave after wave, showing no fear of death. A human destroyer, much larger. Then the fighters charged straight at the Void Talon. It was already heavily damaged, with fires burning along its hull. Zethkar watched in horror as the ship accelerated to ramming speed. Evasive maneuvers, he ordered, but it was too late. The human destroyer, with the name Liberty's Edge, painted on its side, smashed into the Void Talon's port engine section. The impact threw everyone on the bridge to the floor. Alarms began blaring as systems failed throughout the ship. "Report!" Zethkar demanded as he pulled himself back to his feet. "Main engines offline," the engineering officer called out. "Hyperdrive destroyed. We're losing atmosphere on decks 7 through 12. Hull breach in the port section." Through the smoke and sparks, Zethkar could see that half his fleet was gone. The remaining ships were scattered and damaged. The human fleet, though much reduced, was still fighting with the same insane determination. "Commander, we cannot win this battle," Vexthul said quietly. "We must evacuate to the planet's surface and wait for rescue." Zethkar looked around his damaged bridge. His officers, the finest warriors in the Veltharian military, looked defeated and confused. They had never faced an enemy like this. The humans fought like demons, caring nothing for their own lives as long as they could hurt their enemies. "Prepare the escape pods," Zethkar ordered. "All hands abandon ship. We'll regroup on the planet's surface." As his command ship died around him, Zethkar wondered what kind of species he had tried to conquer. The intelligence reports had been completely wrong. These humans were not weak or cowardly. They were something far more dangerous. They were warriors who would rather die than surrender. The escape pod fell toward the blue planet below, carrying Zethkar toward a world where everything he thought he knew about warfare would be proven wrong. The human war zone was waiting for him, and he had no idea what horrors it would contain. The escape pod crashed into the side of a mountain with a sound like thunder. Zethkar's head rang as he struggled to open his eyes. Everything hurt. His thick green skin had protected him from the worst of the impact, but several of his bones were cracked. Around him, the other survivors groaned in pain. Only 6 Veltharian warriors had made it to the surface alive. 6 elite soldiers from what had been a mighty invasion force of over 3,000. Zethkar counted them as they pulled themselves from the wreckage. Vexthal was there, along with 4 other warriors he had served with for years. "Commander, what are your orders?" asked Vexthal. His left arm hung useless at his side, clearly broken. Zethkar looked around at the strange landscape. They had crashed in what the humans called mountains. Tall peaks covered in white snow stretched in every direction. The air was thin and cold, much colder than the climate-controlled ships they were used to. Strange trees with green needles grew everywhere, unlike anything on their home world. "First, we find shelter," Zethkar said. "Then we repair our communication equipment and call for rescue. The Empire will send another fleet within 6 months. We just have to survive until then." It sounded simple, but Zethkar was already beginning to understand it would not be easy. They had crashed in the middle of human territory. Every human on the planet would be looking for them now. And if the space battle had taught him anything, it was that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had believed. The first sign of trouble came just 2 hours later. Zethkar was trying to fix their damaged radio when he heard the sound of aircraft overhead. He looked up to see several small human flying machines circling their crash site. "They found us already," whispered Korvan, the youngest of his warriors. "How is that possible?" Zethkar had no answer. The humans seemed to have eyes everywhere. Within minutes, the aircraft were gone, but he knew they would be back with ground forces. The Veltharians gathered what weapons and supplies they could carry and began moving deeper into the mountains. For the next 3 days, they ran. The humans followed them like hunting animals, always staying just out of sight, but never giving up. Zethkar began to realize that the humans were not just chasing them randomly. They were being herded, pushed towards some kind of trap. The human leader hunting them was a female called Colonel Lisa Carter. Zethkar learned her name by listening to radio transmissions. She commanded hundreds of soldiers and seemed to know exactly how Veltharian warriors would think and move. Every time Zethkar thought he had found a safe route, human forces appeared to block their path. On the 4th day, they were forced to take shelter in a cave when a snowstorm hit. The cold was terrible, much worse than anything they had experienced. Veltharians came from a warm world, and their bodies were not made for this freezing weather. They huddled together, sharing body heat and trying to keep their weapons from freezing. "Commander, I picked up a human radio signal," said Telmach, their communications expert. "They know we're in this area. A patrol is coming this way." Zethkar checked his weapon. They had plenty of ammunition, and Veltharian weapons were still superior to human guns. But he was learning that superior weapons did not always mean victory. The humans had other advantages. The patrol that found them was led by a human male called Sergeant Pete Collins. He was smaller than Zethkar, like all humans, but there was something in his eyes that reminded the alien commander of a predator. Collins had been tracking them for 3 days straight, sleeping only a few hours each night and eating very little food. How does he keep going? Vexthal wondered aloud. He should be exhausted by now. The humans attacked at dawn, just as Zethkar expected. What he did not expect was how they fought. Instead of charging forward like proper warriors, they used the environment against their enemies. They hid behind rocks and trees, appearing just long enough to fire before disappearing again. Sergeant Collins seemed to be everywhere at once. He would pop up on their left, fire several shots, then vanish. Seconds later, he would appear on their right and attack again. His soldiers did the same thing, turning the entire forest into a deadly maze. The battle lasted for hours. The Veltharians had better weapons and armor, but the humans knew the terrain perfectly. They led the aliens deeper into the mountains, where the cold and thin air made it even harder to fight Dot by the end of the day. One of Zethkar's warriors was dead, and 2 others were badly wounded. The humans had lost several soldiers too, but they kept coming. Fresh troops arrived to replace the fallen ones, while the Veltharians had no reinforcements. "We cannot win a direct fight," Zethkar admitted to Vexthul as they retreated again. "They have too many advantages here." The next few weeks became a nightmare of constant running and hiding. The humans never stopped hunting them. During the day, aircraft searched from above, while ground teams followed their tracks. At night, the humans used strange devices that could see heat, making it almost impossible to hide. Zeth single quotes KAR learned the names of several human hunters. There was Captain Danny Torres, who led a special team that moved like ghosts through the forest. They would attack without warning, kill 1 or 2 Veltharians, then disappear before anyone could fight back. Torres personally killed 3 of Zethkar's warriors, each time using different tactics. Then there was Dr. Amy Rodriguez, a human scientist who seemed to understand Veltharian technology better than the aliens themselves. She created new weapons designed specifically to penetrate their armor. She also built traps that used captured Veltharian equipment against them. But the humans that impressed Zethkar the most were not soldiers at all. They were ordinary people who lived in the mountains. A human called Mayor Frank Sullivan refused to evacuate his small town, even though alien warriors were in the area. Instead, he organized the townspeople into a fighting force. These civilian humans used simple weapons like hunting rifles and homemade bombs. They had no military training and no advanced equipment, but they fought with the same crazy determination that Zethkar had seen in the space battle. They would rather die than let aliens take their home. After a month of running, only 3 Veltharians were still alive. Zethkar, Vexthul, and Korvan had survived by being smarter and more careful than their enemies. But they were exhausted, hungry, and running low on ammunition. "Commander, we cannot keep this up much longer," Vexthul said one night as they hid in another cave. "The humans never seem to tire." "How is that possible?" Zethkar had been wondering the same thing. He had started studying the humans more carefully, trying to understand what made them so dangerous. What he discovered shocked him. The humans were not physically stronger than Veltharians. They were smaller, weaker, and died more easily. But they had something his people had lost long ago. They fought not just for themselves, but for ideas that were more important than their own lives. He had watched human soldiers throw themselves at superior enemies to protect their friends. He had seen civilians risk everything to help complete strangers. The humans called it duty, honor, and love of freedom. Concepts that Veltharians had forgotten in their quest for power. Captain Maria Gonzalez was a perfect example. She flew supply missions to human bases in the mountains, even though alien warriors were shooting at her aircraft every day. Her helicopter had been shot down twice, but she kept flying. When asked why, she simply said her people needed those supplies. Zethkar realized that the humans were not just fighting a war. They were fighting for their entire way of life. Every man, woman, and child on the planet was willing to die, rather than become slaves. This was not just an army he was facing. It was an entire species united in defiance. The alien commander began to understand why his mighty fleet had been defeated. The Veltharians fought for conquest and glory. The humans fought for survival and freedom. When everything you care about is at stake, you can find strength you never knew you had. As he sat in the cold mountain cave, listening to human search teams moving through the forest below, Zethkar wondered if the Veltharian Empire had finally met an enemy it could not defeat. For the first time in his long military career, he was not sure his side was going to win. 2 months had passed since the crash, and Zethkar was a different warrior than he had been. The proud commander who had once stood on the bridge of a mighty warship was now a hunted fugitive, hiding in caves and eating whatever food he could find. His green skin had become scarred from countless battles, and his red eyes no longer held the same confidence. Only he and Vexthel remained alive. Young Corvin had died 3 weeks ago when human soldiers found their hiding place in an abandoned mine. The boy had fought bravely, but a human sniper had put a bullet through his heart from over a mile away. Zethkar still could not believe the accuracy of human marksmen. The 2 surviving Veltharians had taken shelter in what humans call the national park. It was a vast area of wilderness with thick forests, deep valleys, and high peaks. Zethkar thought it would be easier to hide here, away from human towns and cities. He was wrong. The humans seemed to know every tree, every rock, every stream in these mountains. They moved through the forest like they were born there, while the aliens stumbled over roots and got lost in the maze of trails. Worse, the humans had enlisted the help of local people who knew the area even better than the soldiers. Lieutenant Danny Torres was still hunting them. His special forces team had been tracking the aliens for weeks, getting closer every day. Torres was like a ghost, appearing suddenly to attack before vanishing into the trees. He had personally wounded Vexthel twice, each time coming closer to making a killing shot. But Torres was not the only threat. The humans had brought in experts from all over their world to help with the hunt. There was Dr. Helen Parker, a scientist who studied animal behavior. She predicted where the aliens would go next by understanding how they thought and moved. Her predictions were terrifyingly accurate. Then there were the civilian volunteers, people like Guide Sam Johnson, who had spent his whole life in these mountains. Johnson could track anything that moved and read signs in the wilderness that the aliens could not even see. He worked with the military teams, teaching them Veltharian movement patterns and helping them set traps. Mayor Frank Sullivan had expanded his civilian militia to over 200 people. They were not trained soldiers, but they knew their home territory better than anyone. They watched every trail, every pass, every place where strangers might try to hide. When they spotted alien tracks, they called in the military teams immediately. Zethkar began to realize that he was not just fighting the human military. He was fighting an entire society that had organized itself for war. Every person, from professional soldiers to ordinary farmers, was part of the effort to hunt down the invaders. The alien commander started studying human history using devices they had captured from abandoned campsites. What he learned made his blood run cold. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, and they had developed ways of warfare that no other species had ever imagined. He read about something called World War II, where humans had fought against an enemy that seemed impossible to defeat. The stories of human resistance were incredible. Ordinary people had formed secret armies, fighting from hiding places and striking at their enemies when they least expected it. Even when their cities were destroyed and their armies defeated, the humans never gave up. There were stories of a place called Vietnam, where a small human nation had defeated a much larger and more powerful enemy. They had used the jungle itself as a weapon, turning their homeland into a deadly trap for invaders. The parallels to his own situation were impossible to ignore. "Commander, these humans are not like any enemy we have ever faced," Vexthal said one evening as they huddled in a small cave. "They do not fight like warriors. They fight like ... double quotes. Like what?" Zethkar asked. "Like parents protecting their children," Vexthal replied. "There is no honor in their fighting, no glory. They only care about winning, no matter what it costs." Them. Zethkar had been thinking the same thing. Veltharian warriors fought for personal honor and the glory of victory. They followed rules of combat that had been passed down for generations. The humans seemed to have no such rules. They used every advantage, every trick, every dirty tactic they could think of. Captain Maria Gonzalez was a perfect example. She continued flying supply missions to remote human outposts, even though her helicopter was held together with spare parts and hope. The aircraft had been shot down 3 times now, but each time she had survived and found a way to keep flying. Zethkar had once watched her land her damaged helicopter in a clearing surrounded by alien positions. She had delivered medical supplies to wounded human soldiers, then taken off again under heavy fire. Her aircraft was smoking and barely able to fly, but she made it to safety through sheer skill and determination. Why does she keep doing it? Vexthal had asked. She could stay safe on the human bases. No one would call her a coward. The answer came from intercepted radio messages. Captain Gonzalez flew those dangerous missions because human soldiers needed those supplies to survive. She was not fighting for glory or conquest. She was fighting to keep her people alive. This was different from everything Zethkar had been taught about warfare. Veltharian military doctrine focused on defeating the enemy through superior strength and technology. The humans seemed to focus on something else entirely, making sure their own people survived and stayed free. The alien commander began to notice other strange things about human behavior. When one of their soldiers was wounded, other humans would risk their lives to save him. When a human settlement was threatened, people from far away would come to help defend it. They shared food, weapons, and information freely, even with strangers. Doctor Patricia Lee was another example of this strange human loyalty. She was a field doctor who treated wounded soldiers in the most dangerous areas of the mountains. She had been shot twice and nearly killed in alien attacks, but she refused to leave the battlefield. When asked why, she said her job was to save lives, not to stay safe. Zethkar watched through binoculars. One day, as Dr. Lee treated a wounded human soldier during a firefight. Bullets were flying overhead, and explosions were going off nearby, but she never stopped working. She saved that soldier's life, then carried him to safety on her own back. She could have left him, Vexthal observed. One less enemy for us to fight. Why did she risk herself for someone who might die anyway? Zethkar did not have an answer. In Veltharian society, the weak were left behind so the strong could survive. It was logical and efficient. But the humans seemed to believe that every life was worth saving, even if it put others at risk. The alien commander started to understand that human strength came from this strange loyalty to each other. They did not fight as individuals seeking personal glory. They fought as part of something larger, something that gave them power beyond their physical abilities. He saw this clearly when a human patrol was ambushed. By Vexthal, the attack should have scattered the humans in panic, but instead they immediately moved to protect each other. Staff Sergeant Rick Johnson had thrown himself on top of a younger soldier to shield him from alien fire. Johnson was badly wounded, but he kept fighting until his team was safe. They fight like a pack, Zethkar muttered to himself. Each one is weak alone, but together they are stronger than the sum of their parts. This realization troubled him deeply. The Veltharian Empire conquered worlds by turning different groups against each other, then defeating them separately. But the humans seemed capable of uniting even former enemies when faced with an outside threat. He had intercepted communications between human military units that had been fighting each other in something called civil conflicts just years before. Now those same groups worked together perfectly against the alien invaders. Their ability to put aside old grudges and unite against a common enemy was something Zethkar had never seen before. As winter approached and the mountains became even colder, Zethkar realized that his understanding of warfare had been completely wrong. The humans were not winning because they had better weapons or superior tactics. They were winning because they had something the Veltharians had lost long ago: the willingness to sacrifice everything for something greater than themselves. Winter had come to the mountains with deadly force. Snow fell constantly now, and the temperature dropped so low that Zethkar's breath formed ice crystals in the air. His thick green skin, which had always protected him from heat and cold, was no match for this frozen hell. Both he and Vexthul were slowly dying from the cold and lack of food. They had taken shelter in what looked like an abandoned human building deep in the forest. It was some kind of research station, filled with strange equipment and scientific instruments. The roof leaked and the walls were cracked, but it was better than sleeping in caves. Vexthul was in bad shape. A human bullet had shattered his shoulder. 3 days ago, an infection was setting in. The wound was turning black around the edges, and he had developed a fever that made him shake constantly. Without proper medical treatment, he would be dead within a week. "Commander, you should leave me here," Vexthul said weakly. "I am slowing you down. You might still have a chance to survive until rescue comes." Zethkar looked at his loyal friend and felt something he had never experienced before. In Veltharian society, Vexthul was right. The weak were abandoned so the strong could live. It was logical and practical. But watching the humans for months had changed something inside the alien commander. "No," Zethkar said firmly. "We stay. Together. That is what humans would do." The words surprised him as much as they surprised Vexthul. When had he started thinking like a human instead of a proper Veltharian warrior? That night, a blizzard hit the mountains with terrible force. The wind howled like a living thing, and snow piled up against the building until the windows were completely covered. The temperature inside the shelter dropped below freezing. Both aliens huddled together, sharing what little body heat they had left. It was during this storm that Lieutenant Danny Torres and his team found them. Zethkar woke to the sound of boots crunching through snow outside the building. He grabbed his weapon and moved to the window, but he could see nothing through the swirling white snow. The humans had surrounded the shelter during the night without making a sound. "Attention, alien soldiers," came a voice through a speaker. "This is Lieutenant Torres of the United States Army. You are completely surrounded. Come out with your hands up, and no one needs to die today." Zethkar almost laughed. After months of running and fighting, the humans wanted him to surrender? He was a Veltharian commander. Death in battle was preferable to the shame of capture. "Never," he shouted back. "We will fight to the last breath." There was a long silence. Then Torres spoke again, but his voice was different now, quieter and more personal. "Commander Zethkar, I know you can hear me. My name is Danny Torres. I have been tracking you for 3 months. I know you are wounded and running out of supplies. I also know your friend is dying." Zethkar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. How did this human know so much about their situation? "I am going to tell you something that might surprise you," Torres continued. "I respect you. You and your friend have survived longer than anyone thought possible. You have fought bravely against impossible odds. But the fight is over now. Let me help you." "Help us?" Zethkar called back. "Why would you help your enemies?" "Because that is what humans do," Torres replied. "We help those who need it, even if they were trying to kill us yesterday. The alien commander did not understand. This made no sense by any military logic he knew. The humans should want revenge for all the soldiers who had died in the space battle and during the long hunt. Through the mountains. "Commander, there are medics with my team," Torres said. "We can treat your friend's wounds. We have food, warm clothes, and medicine. All you have to do is come out peacefully." Vexthul was barely conscious now, mumbling words in the Valtharian, language that made no sense. His fever was getting worse, and Zethkar knew his friend would die without human medical help. But accepting aid from the enemy went against everything he had been taught. "What do you want in return?" Zethkar shouted. "Just your weapons," Torres replied. "Give up your guns and come out slowly. No one will hurt you. You have my word as a soldier, the word of a human soldier." 2 months ago, Zethkar would have laughed at such a thing. But he had seen how humans treated their promises. When they gave their word, they kept it, even when it cost them dearly. Still, he hesitated. Surrender was not the Valtharian way. The decision was taken away from him when Vexthul collapsed completely. His friend's breathing became shallow and rapid, and his skin turned a sickly gray color. Without immediate medical attention, he would be dead before dawn. "I am coming out," Zethkar called. "But if you harm my friend, I will find a way to kill you all." "Understood," Torres replied. "Open the door slowly and keep your hands where we can see them." Zethkar threw his weapons to the floor and walked to the door. He opened it carefully and stepped out into the blizzard. Immediately, red laser dots appeared on his chest as human snipers targeted him. But no one fired. Through the swirling snow, he could see human soldiers positioned around the building. They were well equipped for winter warfare with white camouflage and thermal gear. Behind them, he spotted medical personnel with stretchers and equipment. Lieutenant Torres stepped forward. He was smaller than Zethkar, like all humans, but there was steel in his eyes. This was the man who had hunted him across half a continent, never giving up despite terrible weather and difficult terrain. "Where is your friend?" Torres asked. "Inside. He is badly wounded and very sick," Zethkar replied. Torres nodded to his medics. "Go help him. Do whatever you can." The human medical team rushed into the building while Torres kept his weapon trained on Zethkar. But something strange happened. Dr. Patricia Lee, the field Dr. Zethkar had observed from a distance, began working on Vexthul immediately. She did not hesitate or ask questions. She simply started saving his life. "Why?" Zethkar asked Torres. "Why are you helping him? He would kill you if he could." Torres was quiet for a moment, watching his medics work. "Because that is who we are," he finally said. "We do not let wounded people die if we can help them. Not even enemies." Dr. Lee worked for over an hour in the freezing building, using every skill she had to stabilize Vexthul's condition. She gave him blood transfusions, antibiotics, and pain medication. She cleaned and bandaged his infected wound with the same care she would give to a human patient. "He will live," she announced finally. "But he needs surgery and a proper hospital. We need to get him to a medical facility quickly." Staff Sergeant Rick Johnson, the same soldier Zethkar had seen risk his life for his men, helped carry Vexthul to a medical helicopter. Despite everything the aliens had done, Johnson treated the wounded warrior with respect and gentleness. As they flew toward a human military base, Zethkar sat in stunned silence. He had expected execution or torture as punishment for the invasion. Instead, the humans were giving him and Vexthul the best medical care available. "I do not understand you," he said to Dr. Lee as she continued monitoring Vexthul's condition. "We came to enslave your world. We killed thousands of your people. Why do you save our lives? Dr. Lee looked at him with tired but kind eyes. Because every life has value, she said simply. Human, alien, it does not matter. When someone is hurt and I can help them, I help them. That is what being a doctor means. The helicopter landed at a human military hospital where dozens of medical staff waited to help. They rushed Vexthal into surgery while other doctors examined Zethkar's wounds. No one treated him like a prisoner or an enemy. They treated him like a patient who needed help. General Christopher Hayes arrived at the hospital that evening. He was an older human with gray hair and intelligent eyes. Zethkar expected interrogation and threats, but Hayes simply sat down and began talking. I know this must be confusing for you, Hayes said. Your people probably do not treat captured enemies this way. No, Zethkar admitted, we do not. Tell me about your empire, Hayes said. Help me understand why you came here. For the first time since the invasion began, Zethkar found himself in an honest conversation with a human. Hayes did not shout or make threats. He listened carefully and asked thoughtful questions. He seemed genuinely interested in understanding. The Veltharian point of view dot as they talked through the night. Zethkar began to realize that everything he thought he knew about strength, honor, and warfare had been wrong. The humans had defeated his mighty empire not through superior weapons or tactics, but through something much more powerful. They had shown him mercy when they could have chosen revenge. They had given him compassion when he deserved only justice. They had treated him like a person worth saving, even though he had come to destroy their world. For the first time in his life, Zethkar began to understand what real strength looked like. 3 months had passed since Zethkar's capture, and the alien commander was a changed being. He sat in a comfortable room at the human military base, reading reports that made his blood turn cold. A massive Veltharian fleet was approaching. Earth, bigger than the first invasion force. Over 500 warships carrying more than 50,000 warriors. The humans knew they were coming. Their space telescopes had spotted the fleet weeks ago, and every person on Earth was preparing for the final battle. But unlike his first invasion, this time the humans knew exactly what they were facing. Vexthal had recovered from his injuries, though his shoulder would never be the same. He sat across from Zethkar, studying the same reports with growing horror. Commander, what have we done? Vexthal asked quietly. I have been watching these humans for months. They are not the monsters. Our empire claimed they were. Zethkar nodded sadly. Dr. Elizabeth Stone, a human psychologist, had been helping both aliens understand what they had experienced. Through long conversations, she had shown them how their own empire had lied to them about the nature of conquest and honor. We were taught that strength comes from dominating others, Zethkar said. But these humans have shown us something different. Real strength comes from protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The door opened and General Hayes walked in, followed by Dr. Amy Rodriguez and Captain Jake Morrison. The same Jake. Morrison, who had led the space battle that destroyed Zethkar's first fleet. The human captain looked older now, with new scars and tired eyes. The Veltharian fleet will arrive in 72 hours, Hayes announced. We need to know everything. You can tell us about their tactics and technology. Zethkar looked at the humans who had become his friends over the past months. They had treated him with kindness and respect, even though he had come to enslave their world. The idea of helping them fight his own people should have been impossible to consider, but it was not impossible anymore. I will tell you everything, Zethkar said, but I want to do more than just provide information. I want to fight beside you. The humans looked surprised. Vexthal's eyes went wide with shock. Commander, you cannot be serious, Vexthal said. Fighting against our own people? That is treason of the highest order. Our people are wrong. Sethkar replied firmly. I have seen what real honor looks like. It is not conquering the weak. It is standing up for what is right, even when it costs you everything. Captain Morrison stepped forward. If you help us, there is no going back. Your empire will never forgive you. You will be in exile forever. I understand, Sethkar said, but I have found something here worth fighting for. These humans have shown me that there is a better way to live than constant war and domination. Dr. Rodriguez looked excited. With your knowledge of Veltharian systems, we could develop countermeasures that might actually work. Weapons that could penetrate their shields, tactics that could exploit their weaknesses. Over the next 3 days, humans and aliens worked together with desperate intensity. Sethkar provided detailed information about Veltharian ship designs, weapon systems, and battle tactics. The humans used this knowledge to create new strategies and modify their weapons. Admiral Kevin Murphy commanded the human space fleet that would face the invasion. He was an older man with decades of combat experience, but even he seemed worried about the coming battle. We have maybe 200 ships that can fight in space, Murphy told the planning group. They have over 500. Even with your intelligence, the odds are not good. Numbers are not everything, Sethkar said. I learned that when I faced Captain Morrison's fleet. Humans fight differently than other species. Use that advantage. Commander Sandra Clark would pilot the new human flagship, a ship they had named Defiant Spirit. It was equipped with weapons designed using captured Veltharian technology, but modified with human innovations that made them even more effective. I want you on my bridge during the battle, Clark told Sethkar. Your knowledge of their command codes could give us the edge we need. Lieutenant Commander Nicole Adams brought disturbing intelligence reports. The Veltharian fleet is commanded by High Admiral Krekstar, the most ruthless commander in their empire. He has never lost a battle, and he specializes in destroying entire planets. Sethkar knew Krekstar by reputation. The High Admiral believed that mercy was weakness, and that total destruction was the only way to achieve lasting victory. He would not make the same mistakes as the first invasion force. When the Veltharian fleet finally arrived, it was a terrifying sight. The massive ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. The flagship Death's Glory was twice the size of any human vessel. This is High Admiral Krekstar of the Veltharian Empire, came the transmission. Humans of Earth, your pathetic resistance ends today. Surrender now, and we will allow some of you to live as slaves. Refuse, and we will turn your world into ash. Captain Morrison, now commanding the human fleet, responded immediately. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We tried slavery once. Did not work out. All ships, attack pattern Omega. Show them what humans learned from the last time. The space battle that followed was unlike anything Sethkar had ever seen. The humans had learned from their first encounter with Veltharian technology. Their ships moved in coordinated swarms, using new tactics that confused and frustrated the alien commanders. Aboard the Defiant Spirit, Sethkar worked frantically at a computer terminal, using his command codes to disable Veltharian ship systems. Each successful hack gave the humans a crucial advantage in the ongoing battle. I am getting into their communication network, he reported to Commander Clark. I can disrupt their coordination. But High Admiral Krekstar was not easily fooled. When he realized that someone was sabotaging his fleet from within, he began changing command codes and isolating ship systems. Clever. Krekstar's voice came over the radio. Someone is helping the humans. No matter, we will destroy you all the same. The battle raged for hours across the entire solar system. Human ships fought with the same desperate courage Sethkar had witnessed months ago. They used ramming attacks, suicide runs, and coordinated strikes that exploited every weakness in Valtharian defenses. Captain Maria Gonzalez, flying a modified fighter craft, led a squadron of human pilots against the Valtharian flagship. Her team had volunteered for what everyone knew was a suicide mission. "All fighters, follow me in," Gonzalez radioed. "We are going to take out their main reactor. For Earth, for freedom, for everyone who cannot fight for themselves." Zethkar watched in amazement as the human pilots threw themselves at the massive enemy ship. Most of them died in the attempt, but they created enough chaos for Zethkar to access the flagship's main computer. "I have control of their primary systems," he announced. "Shutting down their weapons and shields now?" The Death's Glory went dark as its systems failed. Human ships immediately swarmed the helpless flagship, pounding it with everything they had. Within minutes, the mighty vessel was a burning wreck. With their command ship destroyed and their coordination disrupted, the Valtharian fleet began to fall apart. Some ships tried to flee, while others fought to the death. The humans showed no mercy to those who continued fighting, but they accepted the surrender of those who gave up. By the end of the day, the second Valtharian invasion had been completely defeated. The human fleet had suffered terrible losses, but they had saved their world. In the aftermath of victory, Zethkar found himself in an impossible position. He was a hero to the humans, but a traitor to his own people. Several Valtharian prisoners had already sworn to kill him for his betrayal. "What will you do now?" General Hayes asked him as they stood on the bridge of the damaged, defiant Spirit. Zethkar looked out at Earth, the blue world that had taught him the true meaning of courage and honor. "I would like to stay, if you will have me. I want to help build something better than endless war." Dr. Stone smiled at him. "I think we can arrange that. The Earth Defense Council has been talking about forming a new organization to protect against future alien threats. They could use someone with your experience." 6 months later, Zethkar stood in a classroom at the new Human-Alien Military Academy. Before him sat 30 young human cadets, eager to learn about alien tactics and technology. But more importantly, they were learning about honor, courage, and the strength that comes from protecting others. "True warriors do not seek to conquer," he told his students. "True warriors seek to protect. They fight not for glory or power, but for the innocent who cannot fight for themselves." One of the cadets raised her hand. "Professor Zethkar, what is the most important lesson you learned from fighting humans?" The alien commander thought for a moment, remembering his long journey from conqueror to protector. "I learned that the strongest people are not those who never fall down. The strongest people are those who get back up, no matter how many times they are knocked down. Humans taught me that real strength comes from never giving up on what is right." Outside the classroom window, human and alien children played together in the academy courtyard. It was a sight that would have been impossible when Zethkar first arrived on Earth.